What's up, everybody? Tim here, back at you with another Lost Classic, and this time we are going to go into part 2 of my Deep Purple Lost Classic series. Last time we covered the album Stormbringer. Again, that was the second and final album of the Mark III lineup, which included Ritchie Blackmore on guitar, John Lord on keyboards, Ian Pace on drums, Glenn Hughes on bass and vocals, and David Coverdale on vocals. But after Stormbringer, Ritchie Blackmore left. He didn't like the funkier, more R&B direction that the band was taking, so he left to form the band Rainbow. So, at the time, I think at this point, John Lord and Ian Pace, who had been with the band since the beginning, were a little tired of all the chopping and changing and new members and all the rigmarole that comes with that. So I'm not sure how keen they were on going on, but David Coverdale did convince them to actually continue the band. And brought in a new guitar player from America named Tommy Bolin. Now, Tommy Bolin had been in some other bands. He'd been in some jazz fusion bands like Zephyr and with Billy Cobham. He had also replaced one of the replacements, I think, for Joe Walsh in the James Gang. I think he replaced the guy that replaced Joe Walsh, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that. But he had quite the resume. Amazing guitar player. Definitely kind of more in that vein of, the jazz fusion and even the funk and soul that Glenn Hughes was into. So they brought him in, and they made an album called Come Taste the Band. And that's this album right here. And again, it's probably over my head. My last video I had on my Deep Purple Stormbringer t-shirt. I do not have a Come Taste the Band t-shirt, unfortunately. I'm not even sure if they have those anywhere. I'll definitely see if I can find one. That would be kind of cool. So you're stuck with me in this tank top. Anyway, Come Taste the Band followed the musical direction that Stormbringer started. Went a little bit further down the funk and R&B stylings of Stormbringer. A lot of that had to do with, at this point in time, Coverdale and Hughes were really asserting themselves, as leaders of the band, whereas maybe Ian Pace and John Lord didn't have as much input, despite the fact that it was really, more than anybody else, their band. That being said, this is a fantastic record. This is absolutely one of my favorite Deep Purple records. Now, most hardcore Deep Purple fans, and even some former members of Deep Purple, will say that this record is not a true Deep Purple record. I've always been the kind of guy, and I've said it before on these shows, that I judge music based on the content of the record, not necessarily whose name is on it. Good music is good music. I don't give a shit what label, it has on there. I'm not one of those that it doesn't sound like every other Deep Purple record, so I don't want it. I don't do that. I try to judge it based on the music alone, and musically, this is a fantastic record. And I think over time has really kind of garnered somewhat of an underground following, amongst, maybe, not even so much the hardest of core Deep Purple fans, but, just in general. This is actually looked upon as a great record. Most of which because of Tommy Bolin, let's face it. So anyway, lots of great songs on here. I got to pull the record out so I don't miss anything. Coming Home, the title track is amazing. Lady Luck, one of my favorites. Getting Tighter was the single from the record and probably one of the funkiest songs they have. I Need Love has some amazing guitar work at the end of it. Drifter, Love Child, You Keep On Moving. This Time Around, which I think was originally written with the idea of Stevie Wonder singing it, but they kept it for this record. So when the album came out, unfortunately, now Deep Purple, in my opinion, are the only band that I'm aware of that were successful with 3 different lineups. They had the Mark I, the Mark II, and the Mark III lineup, all of which had success, whether it be top 40 singles or big selling albums, and at one time they were the biggest band in the world. But I think, having now a 4th lineup, one that did not include Ritchie Blackmore, I just don't know that people were ready for that at the time. So the album, I think it only got up to number 45 or something like that. It didn't get real high on the charts, at least not in America. I think it did pretty well overseas. So, it was kind of starting the downfall of Purple at the time. Again, I think it was just too many changes. And, when they went on tour, that was kind of an issue as well because, back in those days, you toured to sell your record. It's not like now where they make all their money touring and they make albums just to be creative or whatever. Or they make an album to go tour behind. Back then, the tour was what sold your album. So they go on tour, and Tommy Bolin already has the big shoes to fill, Ritchie Blackmore's shoes. Some audiences are more accepting than others. And unfortunately, Tommy Bolin came in with a huge drug problem. He was a heroin addict, and I think both him and Glenn Hughes were doing, tons of cocaine, at the time. So there's issues that came with that. Now, during this tour, there's a pretty well-known story that when they got to Jakarta, Indonesia, they were supposed to come into Indonesia, do one show, and then leave. Now during this ordeal, one of their security workers ended up dead, was murdered, whatever. And I guess the Jakarta government, somehow were trying to frame Glenn Hughes, the bass player, and some other people for the murder. Actually jailed them and everything else. And in order for Hughes to get free, they had to play a second show for free, for no money at all. And then for them to even leave the country, they had to give up the money from the first show. So they ended up coming there, going through all this drama, and got weaseled into playing two shows, and then in the end really got no money for it. So I think for a band that was already on shaky ground, that really was one of the final straws. And then on top of that, like I said, Tommy Bolin had a pretty severe heroin problem, which came to a head in Japan when I guess he shot up and I guess fell asleep on his arm or something like that, and it was so numb to the point where he couldn't play. And unfortunately, that particular concert is documented on a live album that came out in '77 called Last Concert in Japan. And you can really hear it on there. I mean, John Lord really has to fill in for, a good bit of the show. You don't even hear Bolin playing anything. So, unfortunately, because of all that, because of lackluster sales and everything else, they did break up in March of 1976. And that would be the end of Deep Purple until 1984 when the Mark II lineup got back together. And, maybe we'll cover that some other day. But again, this is an amazing record. And one thing I will say, so, years later, they always come out with 20th anniversary editions, 40th anniversary, whatever. And this is no different. In 2010, they did release a 35th anniversary edition of Come Taste the Band. And what it was, so the first CD is the album As It Were, as it were in 1975, just remastered. The second CD was a complete remix by a producer named Kevin Shirley. So if you don't know who Kevin Shirley is, he's done a lot of work with Journey and Aerosmith and the Black Crowes and so on and so forth. Bonamassa, Black Country Communion, all sorts of artists. So check him out. But he did a complete remix of this album and really brought it into, more of a current day sound, really brought out a lot of the sounds, a lot of the things that were edited out, and really just took an already great album and just made it absolutely stunning. So if you get a chance, check out the vinyl if you want, like I've got here. This is great too, but that 35th anniversary is absolutely amazing. So, to close out, again, this is called Inside the Vinyl, so again, we'll go inside the vinyl. Now, this one has a little more to it than Stormbringer did. There really wasn't much to that. So, again, here's the cover, a wine glass with the band's faces in it. If you turn it over, you have the empty wine glass, so apparently somebody drank those faces. You have the song titles and everything else, nothing too exciting here. If you open up the gatefold, you have a lot of different pictures of the band, while they were making the record and whatever else. If you see down here, you see David Coverdale with his trusty beard. So that's why I grew this beard, so I thought it would be nice for the occasion. Unfortunately, I don't have the flowing locks of hair that he does up top, so this is the best I can do. Anyway, so, just, open up the gatefold and, again, a lot of cool pictures and a lot of information about the album and stuff, about engineers and producers and all that shit. Most of that stuff only people like me read. So let's see. And then, if we were to slide out slide the record out. Now here, the actual inner sleeve has all the lyrics to the songs on it. Lyrics on one side, lyrics to the side B on the other side. And then if you pull the record out, once again, nothing too flashy, just your standard Warner Brothers and Purple music flair. So nothing too crazy going on there. Nice record. This one, I actually picked this up at a used record store. It's in really good condition. And like I said, there has been a lot of live records documenting this lineup of the band. It's amazing how a lineup that really wasn't as successful with the one album as the other lineups can have so much documentation of their live stuff. There are so many Mark IV live records out there. Again, there's Last Concert in Japan. I know there's the King Biscuit Flower Hour and several others. So it's if you want to hear more of Tommy Bolin with Deep Purple and you really want to hear him rip into some of the old tunes, I would not recommend Last Concert in Japan. But if you can pick up the King Biscuit or in one of its other titles, it's like, you know, it's a concert from San Francisco from like March of '76. You know, he kicks ass on that one. So check that out. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully I didn't go on and on too long like I tend to do. I'm just very, very passionate about this album. I'm passionate about Tommy Bolin and this lineup of the band. And unfortunately, you know, we didn't get to hear maybe more of what this lineup might have been capable of had things not gone so wonky on tour and whatever else. But it is what it is. You know, unfortunately, Tommy Bolin did pass away in December of 1976. He's got a couple of solo records out too. One's called Teaser, the other one's called Private Eyes. Check those out. If you like what you heard here, check out my channel, subscribe. I've got some other videos. I've got part 1 of Deep Purple, the Stormbringer edition, so check that out. I've also got other Lost Classics on, you know, Kiss and Def Leppard and Foreigner. I've got some concert footage from Welcome to Rockville, also Exit 111 this past October in Tennessee, you know, in case you're stuck inside with coronavirus and, you know, need a release, you know, need to see some concert footage. I've got it out there. Check it out. Again, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.